Um, Hi,
Okay.
Greg. Nice to have you here. It had been a while. I think last time when we spoke, I was in back in Spain.
Yes.
Uh,
Good to see you.
you're back.
And looks like
Yeah, good.
you're sitting in Stanley Park.
Yes, so yes, I am. I've been for a run, so that's why I was like, okay, maybe I should put this one on the background. Happy to see you again back in Canada here, and I'm actually really excited of what we're talking about today because I don't have many information on that, and I'm curious, and I'm sure that the listener as well, to learn a little bit more about the energy balance theory that misled economists. But before jumping in, I just have a really quick question. What was that triggered you to actually research more into this area? Why were you interested into this?
So when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, my father in the care home he was in was just like 1 mile from where the first outbreak was in a nursing home. And one of the things as it spread is you learned that, pardon me, you learned how much obesity and diabetes and other chronic conditions were a major comorbidity for people with severe or critical COVID. My father was suffering with dealing with type 2 diabetes. And so that was my research interest. I mean, holy smokes, if we've had this obesity and diabetes epidemic in the US, as a public health issue, and in Western Europe to some extent, and England as well. And then we find that COVID hits those people the hardest. And there's complicated, metabolic issues with that. But why are people so heavy? So I started reading about that. And of course, I noticed that I was getting heavy too, that I was maybe 20 years behind my dad, but I'd gained weight from, the 190s to 200s to 210. It's just sort of ratcheted up. And then in April, I was, as I've mentioned in earlier podcasts, I was up at 230. And, my visceral fat, belly fat was larger. My pants weren't fitting and I was trying to buy bigger pants. And so all those things together sort of got me researching and basically listening to people talk about the history of federal dietary guidelines and the claim that was connected, the low fat push was connected to increases in obesity. That became an interesting theory. So I began watching videos online, learning more, buying books. I've got 2 shelves of books, and I'm, trying to stay away from promoters and keep with MDs and researchers, people with PhDs who are writing about their research and metabolic health. So that's long answer.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. I was actually curious when I read about this. I'm like, what? I don't know about too much about the subject, so I was just interested what triggered you. But since you mentioned about the research and everything, I know you recently posted a response to Emily Osterdiet's and data post, commenting a little bit about the fact that the popular diets call for so known concept calorie count, right? Eating less and exercising more. Can you tell us a little bit more about the energy balance theory of obesity? What did you learn from this?
Right, and that's I think really important too, because it's a it's a little bit so in the initial battle is, should you reduce fats in the diet or reduce carbohydrates, and battles over those issues and keto and other things, and that's all one set of ongoing battles and research and discussion. Then came in September a journal article by David Ludwig of Harvard and 12 co-authors, arguing that something separate but related, which was that public health officials and nutritionists had been convinced that the reason why there was obesity is that people were not moving as much, right? We're a service economy, people sitting in chairs and getting heavy simply because we're not moving around enough. And if only we would exercise a little more or eat a little less, we could lose weight. So this was, a common sense idea of thermodynamics, right? If we consume more calories and we're sort of a biological machine, unless we expend those calories, we're going to continue to gain weight. And, like many ideas that seem plausible. The energy balance one did, and Gary Taub's writing on this explains how the particular people proposing this research and so forth. And the challenge is that it's just wrong. It's not supported, but it's still the key to the diet industry. So, various companies have calorie counting technologies and apps. You get points for this and you lose points for that. And you're basically trying to keep track of how many calories you consume. Well, the energy balance people say that's not the case. And then when Arnold Kling cited Emily Oster, an economist that does parent data, talking about why diets don't work, here in January when it's diet time, lots of good ideas, but it was still based on this energy balance idea. And instead, most people who gain a lot of weight, it's a hormone imbalance. It's an issue with insulin. It's a problem with how their body responds to what they're eating. It's not a question of the number of calories. It's a question of how your body metabolizes those calories.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting because, it's easy to say, well, eat less, exercise more. But of course, you can unbalance other functions of your body, as we've talked several times about the thyroid, and there's so many more out there. So that's actually really interesting. And I want to deepen a little bit more because I know she actually recommended a book written by two economists, which is called Economists Diets. And I know you are reading that book. What did you learn from that? Any thoughts, any thing that you can share and you'd like to share with us?
So I recommend the book. Initially, I ordered the book after hearing about it, and I read the part that was on Amazon that you can read for free. It's called The Economist's Diet, and it's basically using the tools of economics to lose weight. And so part of it is, the reality that we're in a society of abundance, right? That it was easier in people in the 1700s not to get heavy because they didn't have enough money. They barely had enough to eat. They weren't usually alcoholics because they couldn't buy enough alcohol. So it was only the rich who suffered from obesity and gout and because they had access to so much. But so economists say now we're in an abundant society. Most people in the world are now in the middle class. They have access to more food. And so they're not constrained the way they used to be. So that's part of the economist diet, is focusing on the reality. Here's the problem. We have too much, access to too much food. Number two, in the diet, they're recommending a number of economic steps of changing our incentives and doing this and that. So lots of good ideas, but it's still based on the energy balance idea that you've got to, if not count calories, be conscious of calories. And both Emily Oster and the Economist Diet authors say you've got to, it's sort of a stoicism. You've just got to get used to being hungry. You're going to suffer, get used to it. And then, you can change your lifestyle. And it worked for them. So like rule number one, the diet that helps people get healthy and lose weight is the best one. So I applaud them. These two guys lost weight. They've kept it off for many, many years. So that's a success story. But for most people, when you do what they recommend and eat less, after you can lose weight for a month, and most dieters have, they lose weight, and then all of a sudden they start to go nuts because their metabolism steps down. Their body thinks it's starving. They then the next month they're gaining weight on the same amount of food that they lost weight on last month, and they feel miserable. They're cold, miserable, angry, hangry, all that stuff. And the Economist Diet people, they offer suggestions for that, but in the end, just push through it. You stop eating sugar and carbs for a month or excess, you'll get used to it. But people are different, and that doesn't work for a lot of people. A lot of people have tried that, and they've done the suffering. They've got angry. They've made everyone around them suffer, and then they binge and get heavy again, gain more weight. So Emily Oster and some of the people, the lady she cites, say, look, don't diet. They're saying it's okay to be overweight, get used to it. And so I don't agree with that either, although I don't want people to suffer or feel shamed. But what if you could just eat different foods and naturally lose weight? And that was what happened to me, what happens to a lot of people. And they feel better. So The thing is, you get healthy first, and then you'll lose weight. It's true. Focusing on the weight, I mean, it's not the most important thing. Your metabolic health matters most. So you have to learn about how to find that or measure it.
I like that you mentioned first health and then losing weight, right? Because sometimes we get into this kind of society pressure, and you're like, oh, I have to lose weight no matter what, but not with your health, right? You can't play with that. So I really like that. And obviously, I'm seeing here that there's a lot of parts that you disagree on. But is there something that you found that you can actually apply, or you agree with the authors?
Yeah, well, I'm an economist. They're economists, and I like the way they think. I like the economic way of thinking. And Emily Oster cites a research paper that she recommends where